Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. It's good to be with you today. I hope you're looking forward to a really good week. I have a thought this morning that I'd like to pass along to you. It comes from Hosea chapter 10 and verse 12, and it reads this way. I said, plant the good seeds of righteousness, and you will harvest a crop of love. Plow up the hard ground of your hearts, for now is the time to seek the Lord, that he may come and shower righteousness upon you. Well, around here, people are starting to plow and get ready their fields for this coming crop. And it's really interesting to see how the ground out the window was kind of a lightish brown as whatever was left has died off. And now as they dig up under the earth, it gets a darker brown. And you can clearly see out my house window where the fields have been plowed and where they haven't been. And it's just an interesting sight as I think about how the cycle of life, as some have called it, just comes and comes and comes. And so now, once again, this springtime of the year, people are starting to get ready to plant their crops. I'm assuming that wherever you are, same thing is happening, or at least in terms of planting gardens and getting things ready for that. And so this passage speaks to this time as we experience it here on earth. Now, if you live in a city or a suburb where they don't do any of this kind of a thing, well, you'll just have to use your imagination at the imagery that I share, or you can get in your car and maybe drive somewhere and see how life changes in the farming areas. Well, the passage starts out by saying, plant the good seed of righteousness, and you will harvest a crop of love. Well, now, it's obvious, I think, that if you want to harvest something, you have to plant something. Now, weeds seem to take care of themselves. But then again, they're planted, the seeds fly everywhere. I know in my yard I got a bunch. Well, let me rephrase it this way. I have a magnificent collection of dandelions. I mean to tell you, at parts of the year, my yard is a beautiful yellow. I know a lot of people don't like dandelions, and I don't think they're my favorite flower at all, but I have to recognize the fact that they're there. Now, before you say, oh, well, why don't you just spray them or reseed or something? Well, that would be a possibility. But the problem is, in the field behind me is another outstanding crop of dandelions. And when the wind blows, those dandelion seeds blow into my space. And there's no way I can prevent that. So if I try to eradicate dandelions in my yard, I am on the proverbial spinning wheel with no possibility of getting off. And maybe you experienced that. So in terms of the dandelions, I don't have to plant a thing. Nature does that for me. But for other things, if I want to, if I want to get a crop, I got to plant something. Now it goes on to say, plow up the hard ground of your hearts. Now this is the hard part. You see, before you can plant something, you have to prepare the ground. You can't just go out on hard ground and throw some seeds down and expect them to show up. Well, expect anything to show up. Maybe one or two will come up, but the rest of them won't. And over the years, particularly when I was younger, didn't know a thing about planting. My parents never raised a garden. I never had a chance to see how it was done. I decided I wanted to have a garden, so I went out and tried and tried and tried. Those first few efforts were really pretty pathetic. But nevertheless, you have to plow up that ground. Around me, if people didn't plow, nothing would happen. Now, I do know from my other experiences in life that there is a process called no-till farming, where you don't plow it up. You scratch it up and you get rid of the cover, and you never turn the ground over. And from what I understand, in the areas where that process is used, they have as good a success as those who turn the ground over with plow. But being that as it may, this passage uses the terminology and the imagery of plowing, digging up the hard ground of your heart, it says. Now you think, well, my heart's not hard. Well, I don't know whether it is not. I mean, you'll have to look at your own heart and figure that out. But it says that if you want to have a harvest crop of love, then you have to plant the seeds of righteousness. So if you're not producing a crop of love, love to others, love to yourself, love to your family, your neighbors, if the way you describe those relationships is not one of love, well, then I'm talking to you. Well, actually, I'm not talking to you. This passage is talking to you. I'm just the spokesperson. You have to plant seeds of righteousness. What's righteousness? Righteousness, very simply, is doing things God's way. Doing it the way God wants you to do. If you don't know what that would be, well, look at the example of Jesus. He was God in flesh. He shows us how to live. He teaches us how to talk, how to relate to people, and how to go through a lifetime, though his was shorter than most of ours, but to go through a lifetime of doing good and having compassion and caring about all sorts of people. So it says here, if you want this love, then you have to plant righteousness. And in order to plant, you have to plow up the hard ground. But that's not the end of the story, because the end of the story is the last verse, or last part of the verse. For now, meaning right now, this moment, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, right this moment, now is the time to seek the Lord, that he may come and shower righteousness upon you. You see, the whole point of planting a garden or planting the fields where I live is to get something for it. It's either to get something that's really tasty, like a garden vegetable, or to make money, like a farmer does. And when we sow seeds of righteousness, we get something for it. Now, that's not being selfish. That's not being self-centered. It's simply saying that the natural consequence of sowing seeds of righteousness and demonstrating love is that God will shower his righteousness on you. See, it's really simple. You want to experience God's blessings in your life, you got to share God's blessings with those around you. If your life is miserable, look at what you're planting, what you're sowing. Probably not sowing compassion and care. You're probably sowing something a little bit different. So this morning, I'd like you to think about this verse. Plant the good seeds of righteousness, and you'll harvest a crop of love. Think about it. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. So until next time, God bless you. I'll talk to you again.